Adam Schefter, ESPN senior NFL insider, joins the Bottom Line. Adam, how are you doing today, man?
Hello there, guys. How you doing?
Adam, what's going on, buddy?
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Haven't seen you since the Chad Tuff event a couple of years ago. That was pretty good one. I think that was Lloyd's 20th anniversary of the national championship team.
Pretty good, huh? How about that, Braylon? He's a great guy, and it was an honor to be there that night.
But guess what? You know who the MVP of that night was? It wasn't me. It wasn't you. It wasn't Lloyd. It was a daughter of yours, man. How's she doing?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's paid attention, but basically she spent the year as a correspondent on Nickelodeon. They do a show called Slime Time each week during the season. She was interviewing a different NFL player. She co-hosted the show this week with Nate Burleson. She co-hosted a bunch of shows this year. She's 13. She moved to the stage the first time, and the first time I saw her, I was like, holy cow, she's got
Jeez.
Like, I never would have been able to do at 13 what she's doing. Never. So
13, I was picking my nose at him, so she's much further ahead.
Yeah.
She's doing great.
When you introduced me to her, she was special. I can see her out the gate. That's why this doesn't surprise me what you're telling me, because she was sharp as a tack.
Well, if you go tonight, I'm sure the show's going to repeat. If you go home and just check your local listings, look at Nickelodeon, look for the show Slime Time, see when it reruns this week, and you can watch her co-host, and you can see that little girl that you met that night, Braylon, turn into. She's a little bigger now, but still, there's nothing that brings me any more professional joy than watching her do well.
Good. We'll check for that. Adam, obviously, Jim signed his contract today, $7 million extension. But let's talk about January through February. Can you talk anything about what was going on in terms of him thinking that he was going to be in Vegas, but then going to the Vikings, thinking that was going to be a done deal, and here he is back in Ann Arbor? How do you feel about that?
Well, I don't think the Vegas thing ever was really a thing. I know it was out there in the media, but tracking it, I never, ever got the sense that Vegas was a real threat, a real opportunity. I think that if the Raiders had called and been interested, I think there might have been some interest from Jim's part in exploring that opportunity. It never got to that, ever. So Vegas, for all the chatter there was in the media, was really, I think, more of a media creation than anything else. The Vikings was real. He went out there, and I think that he and Vikings ownership spoke just a different language in terms of everything, right? I know there were reports that he didn't get offered the job, but you can really spin it however you want. I think that they just talked about how it would be, whether it would work, and I think both sides decided that it was not right. And Jim afterwards came out of that meeting, and I think he was impressed with the Vikings owners and the situation and the organization. He was very complimentary of them, but the fact of the matter is, that night he walked out and he's like, I'm going back to Michigan and I'm staying at Michigan. And I said, so that's it? Like, no more NFL? He said, no more NFL. This is not going to be a recurring thing. I'm going to be back there, and that's it. Now, you could believe him or not believe him. I tend to think that Jim Harbaugh is a very honest and direct and transparent person. When he says something, he means it. And so I'll take him at his word that he says that that's not something that's going to interest him in the future, and we'll see if that's right.
Speaking of the Vikings in the NFC North, Deshaun Watson rumored to be talking to the Vikings, as well as Aaron Rodgers rumored to be trying to keep it real in Green Bay. Do you have anything on what Deshaun Watson is doing, the legal things? How is he going to be able to overcome that this year? Vikings is it Tampa real as well?
Well, first of all, Braylon, let me just point out something. When you hear something that's rumored, my first question is, where is it rumored from? What are the origins of that? And so people are saying that the Vikings could have some interest. Okay, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But right now I can tell you that there is nothing really going on with Deshaun Watson from the Texans' perspective. They're waiting to see how this situation is going to play out. I think it would definitely make sense for them to trade him. I think it would make sense for him to move on. It would make sense for both sides to come together and figure out a path that they each could get out of it what they want. But they're nowhere near that right now, today. They could be tomorrow. They could be next week. They have to do something here relatively soon. But as we speak today, they're nowhere. So I don't know if there's a team out there. Yes, Minnesota could say, boy, we'd love to have Deshaun Watson privately. And Tampa Bay could say, we'd love to have Deshaun Watson privately. But nobody's spoken to Houston about it. And so Houston's waiting to see how Deshaun Watson wants to handle it. There's a lot that has to play out. Aaron Rodgers, I think the Packers are just in a much better place than they were a year ago. A year ago, I don't believe he wanted to be back there at all. I think at the very least he's open-minded to that now, and we'll see how that plays out. Doesn't mean he's back there or not back there, but certainly they're in consideration, which, if you're a Packers fan, is a lot more than you could say at this time last year.
Well, Adam, we're now post-Super Bowl. Obviously, the NFL is gearing up for the offseason. We talk a lot here about narrative stories. What's the league-wide perception of Matthew Stafford 1 year removed from Detroit, arguably one of the worst franchises over the last 58 years? Is it just media hype that he's getting all this love and praise, or are the executives, GMs, the head coaches all saying the same things? This guy was...
But those are teams I know that were interested and would have traded for Matthew Stafford. So there were teams lined up to trade for him. That is beyond dispute. We can point out other things that are beyond dispute. He is the fastest quarterback to ever throw for 20,000 passing yards in NFL history. He is the fastest quarterback to throw for 30,000 yards in passing history, NFL history, fastest to 40,000, and is now 5 yards away from becoming the fastest quarterback to throw for 50,000 yards. How many more milestones you want to hit before you say this guy's a really good quarterback?
Yeah.
And last and not least, he won, 4 playoff games this year? 4.
Yep.
Including the Super Bowl. So he's a Super Bowl champion quarterback in which he threw 3 touchdown passes in the Super Bowl. I don't care what the league-wide perception is. He's a Super Bowl champ that multiple teams are interested in acquiring after last season, and those are the facts.
Adam Schefter joins us, ESPN senior NFL. Hey, Adam, about Matthew Stafford. In 2 years, he's a free agent, unrestricted. And I know a few Lion fans that wouldn't mind seeing him back here. But what do you think the market for Matthew Stafford would be? Or do you think he's a Ram for life?
Well, I think that the Rams will wind up restructuring that contract and extending it. I would be surprised if Matthew Stafford ever hit free agency in the prime of his career. How old is he now? 32, 34?
34.
Yeah.
34. So, I mean, he's got 2 more years left. At some point here, he'll be extended if that's what he chooses to do, because the Rams would certainly do that. They're waiting for the right time to create more cap space. So, I mean, he maybe one day, to your point, to your idea, it would be fun to see him finish up as a Lion. But I don't imagine that would be anything more than signing a 1-day contract to retire as a Lion. I don't see him going back to play there anytime soon.
Adam, keep it here in Detroit. I know you're just another one of the guys when I'm going to ask you about this. How could a team win 1 playoff game since 1957 in the NFL today? Meanwhile, several expansion teams have won Super Bowls, have gone to Super Bowls, and we're sitting with 1 playoff win against the Cowboys when we had Barry Sanders. How does that happen?
Well, it's a tough one, and it's not easy to explain. I think that when you look at it, the Lions have been more known for driving away superstars than they have been winning. And so there's an issue there. And if that's the case, that you've got Barry Sanders walking away and Calvin Johnson walking away, clearly there are things that the organization has not done the right way in the past. You guys are there. You see it every day. You would know that better than me. But you can't have that streak of losing with superstar players growing disenchanted and walking away and not wonder what is going on. There have been different coaches. There have been different front offices. Right? So
we know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
This ain't Pittsburgh.
Absolutely not. Adam, I do have a question for you. Back to Aaron Rodgers. Speaking of disgruntled superstars, there hasn't really been anything out there's worth looking at in terms of where he could be traded. I'm sure all the destination, the obvious one, Denver, Pittsburgh, teams in the market for a quarterback. But what is Green Bay's intention? The last we've heard from them, it was, we plan on restructuring, likely figuring this out, bringing back the crew. But how realistic is that for them?
Well, Green Bay's intention is to have him back, and Green Bay is going to go all in to bring him back, and all in terms of giving him a new contract. I'm sure if he's going to come back, they'll promise to bring back Devontae Adams, and they'll mortgage their future to try to win now, because they would follow a plan similar to what the Saints did, I would imagine. That's how it would go. And so it's a situation where they'd be all in. But the issue there is it's not their decision. It's Aaron Rodgers' decision. Is he all in with Green Bay? And we think that he might be interested, definitely, and we think that could happen. But he hasn't said. Have you heard him say? I haven't heard him say yet. I'm going to be back in Green Bay, and I'm not interested in going somewhere else as of right now. Now that he could say that anytime, and when he does, that means that he's back in Green Bay. But I haven't heard that yet, and we'll see how he decides to play his future here, because he's got the ability to do what he wants to do this offseason.
Let me ask you a question, kind of like a side note to that. With Devontae Adams, how do they keep Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers if he was even to want to come back? How do you keep Devontae as well? Because Devontae's tag has to be a big one after his last 5 years.
Yeah, it's a $20 million tag, Braylon, but so what? You sign an extension that gives you more cap relief this year. And look, teams can do whatever they want. I mean, you just spread it out. You give Devontae Adams a long-term deal. You give Aaron Rodgers a long-term deal. And at some point, the bill is going to come due. It's like a credit card. You keep charging on it. But at some point in time, you're going to have to pay the bill. And the Packers would be prepared to do that in time at the expense of trying to win now. And so to them, that would be worth it. And that's something that they would love to be able to do, assuming that Aaron will want to come back. And if Aaron will want to come back, then I'm sure Devontae will want to come back. And if Aaron's going to leave, I'm sure Devontae's going to want to leave. So, again, let's see how these coming weeks play out. But they're waiting for an answer from Aaron Rodgers.
Adam, Lions have 5 of the top 100 picks in this upcoming draft in April. They got the number 2 pick. Do you see them staying at number 2? You see them moving it? I know it's early, but that's our Super Bowl here in Detroit. That's what we talk about.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I would say is normally last year I think there were 5 quarterbacks picked in the top 15 picks. And so normally, teams are coming up to pick quarterbacks. I love Aiden Hutchinson as a player. I love Evan Neal as a player. I love Kayvon Thibodeau as a player. But I don't see teams mortgaging their future to give up draft picks to go trade up for an offensive or defensive lineman. I just don't see that happening. And so my guess is when all is said and done, I would feel pretty confident in saying that the Detroit Lions will be sitting there at number 2 in the draft in April, and we'll see what they decide to do with that pick.
Quarterback or no?
But no, there's no quarterback in this draft. In my mind, we're taking it number 2. I would not expect that it would be a quarterback at 2.
Got to touch on some Michigan stuff before we get you out of here, Adam. I see the Michigan helmets in the background. As always, you always represent. With Jim coming back, with Jim coming back in Ann Arbor, you're excited about him now. You get the stability, you get the team back, you get him back on track. What do you look at this year for Michigan? What do you think their obstacles and their challenges will be in order to run it back this year? This is on a lighter note.
Yeah, well, they had such a great year last year, and I think that a lot of things fell into place, and they're going to lose a lot of talent off this team. And they've already lost some coaching firepower. Mike McDonald is gone. Josh Gaddis is gone. So the guys that they bring in to replace them are going to have to prove that they can do what these guys last year did. You're going to lose some great players off that defense, like Aiden Hutchinson. Do they have guys that can replace them? And look, Braylon, from the time you went there to the time I went there to the time many people in the audience went there, Michigan's always been a factory. It just one guy leaves and another guy comes in. And so I want to think and I want to believe that that's going to be the case again. But again, these guys have to go do that. So what will it take? It will take guys stepping in and producing, but there's no reason that this school shouldn't keep winning.
Adam, last question, and this is about you yourself. I noticed on Amazon, I follow you on Twitter, I saw that The Man I Never Met is now available on Amazon. Can you please talk about that book just a little bit? It's a memoir of yours.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate asking, brother. That's a book that I wrote a while back, and it was a book basically I wrote it with a gentleman who lives in Ann Arbor by the name of Michael Rosenberg, writes for Sports Illustrated, very gifted and talented writer. And we spent some time. We wrote this book about my wife's late husband. My wife lost her first husband on 9/11, and that's the title of the book, The Man I Never Met, a memoir. And so it was kind of like about his life and about her life and how I stepped into their life and how we tried to make it work. And so it was something that was very personal. And I think a lot of people that did read it were moved and touched by it. And it stemmed from a piece that we did on ESPN on the 15th anniversary of 9/11 back in 2016. The book was written a year or two after that. So, yeah, if you just Google Adam Schefter 9/11 video tribute, you would see the piece that ran on ESPN. But honestly, I think they've played enough. I think people have seen it. Most people have seen that piece, and if they haven't, just go Google it. I would say, in the interest of keeping his memory alive, it's a piece that is definitely worth seeing.
Adam, can't thank you enough for coming on the show with us today. We really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Adam.
Thank you so
really
much, Adam.
appreciate
Really
having you on
appreciate
here,
it.
Adam.
Thank you,
Adam,
guys. Appreciate it.
Keep up the great work. You too.
And tell your daughter I said hello.
I will do that, guys. I appreciate that. Watch Slime Time.
I will
Go
watch
Blue.
Slime Time. Definitely go Blue.